All right, should we get going here? Oh, we're ready? Do I have to? Oh, it's recording already. All right, good. All right, cool. So let's get going. Welcome to the Five City Podcast. We have special guest Reid from 26 Shirts. We're going to do a little break off from our usual and talk a little Bills football, which is good. So we'll start with the pain of last week, I guess. I mean, it was, like I said, it is what it is. The way I view it is, listen, we're not going to win every game most likely, and this one is, a lot of injuries. The heat played a huge part in it. It was like, just crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, they played as well. First of all, thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
this is cool. It's an awesome setup you have here. I'm really jazzed. I don't know if people still say jazzed. I'm feeling jazzed. But, they're still good. They gained almost 500 yards of offense. Right. The defense held that depleted defense, which this shows complete credit to Brandon Beane and his team for this roster that they put together, that they're able to pull dudes literally off the practice squad,
right?
Exactly. to defend this Dolphins offense. Defense held the Miami offense to just over 200. Right. So you got about 500 to 200. The Bills won every single aspect of that game except for the score. The one part that counts. That's
right. And you look back, the drop pass by Gabe Davis, the missed field goal. There's so many things you can just say, well, they would have won the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we were talking in the office on Tuesday. I was traveling Monday, but we were talking about the game on Tuesday, and there was, I think, 6 different plays that we identified that would have made the difference.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's the butterfly effect, in terms of like earlier on, you don't know if Gabe Davis catches that touchdown or whatever, what happens. But towards the end there, if Isaiah McKenzie is able to, if Josh is able to get that ball to him.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's crazy. Like, Diggs was on some national podcast or show this week, and he said he had never had, he was having like a full body cramp. Like, every part of his body was cramping up. He said he had never experienced that before.
Yeah, it seemed like that was happening to a lot of the players. Especially the linemen were just going down left and right. It seemed like, I'm like, how do we have so many linemen? The other guys just coming in left and right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you watch towards the end of the game, both sides of the line, it looks like they're playing like in slow motion.
Yeah. Oh, I
Even
know.
the Zach Moss run,
exactly,
like both lines are like, all right,
Like, all right, we'll just like do this to each other.
Yeah, they're playing patty cake or something. But
exactly.
Yeah, it was hot. I don't know why it was different than other games that have been played there in September, but something about, because all these Bills fans are getting upset. Like, it was 120 degrees on the field and this and that. Like, the Dolphins don't go undefeated at home every single September.
Right, exactly.
Right? So maybe it was like a really, really warm day that day. But
and we go down there and play in hot. We've been down there playing in that kind of weather before too. So
they won 35-0 last year in September. So it sucks. It was a tough game for whatever reason. It reminds me. You remember that old show Coach?
Oh yeah.
There was an episode where it was like one of the final seasons where he's coaching a professional team and they're playing in Buffalo. He's like coaching for all of the Buffalo Billy's Bar and Grill. I don't know why I remember this episode. They sent over a free care package to the team, the whole team, all these chicken wings.
Yeah. And
the wings were all undercooked. And only the one coach was doing okay, because the one, I think his name was Gunther. I don't know. It was the really dumb assistant coach. I'm sorry, I'm going way off on a tangent here, but it's a funny story. He's the only one that was okay because he was so dumb. He always cooked his chicken like his meat. Like, you wanted a little pink in the middle. And so he had like a natural immunity to salmonella. But you got to wonder, like, if there's some kind of, like, the way that it affected everybody on the team. And that was intentional by the Buffalo Billy's Bar. They intentionally sent over the undercooked wings.
That's funny.
But you wonder if in Miami, like, there was something going on. Like, it affected everybody. It was crazy. Yeah. I don't know.
It was weird. It was, look, Miami's a better team, obviously, this year. And, they had, what they played the Ravens the week before. They scored, 30 points in the fourth quarter, something crazy. But, yeah, even with the depleted defense, they still held their own. And
I am still just as excited for this team as I was Sunday morning before the game started.
Well, and that's the thing. I go back to last year, right? Last year, everybody remembers the end of the year where we played amazing, right? Josh was like lights out in the playoffs. But we had some stumbles we weren't perfect during the year. And we had stumbles that we thought, oh, geez, is this the real team? Is this the team we think it is or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it wasn't until halftime of that Tampa game where everything kind of turned around.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And I was in Jacksonville last year. A bunch of, our family went down there. And we picked that game because, one, it's November. It's going to be warm. They're playing what we thought was a patsy team. Where it's guaranteed W. Everybody we met that weekend was like, please just take it easy on us. And we were like, we'll think about it, And then we end up losing like 9-6 or whatever. Whatever that score was. It was a debacle.
Yeah.
But then that Tampa game, like they've talked about it in interviews, like Josh just woke up the team or had some kind of rallying cry in the locker room in Tampa, which completely changed their season.
Well, he went on a firestorm after that. I mean, it was just, those 2 playoff games were just, I haven't gone back and, even though the Kansas City game was on a few times and I was like, yeah, I want to watch it, but I'm like, I'm not going to go back and watch it.
When they finally win a Super Bowl, please, God, please, when they finally win a Super Bowl, I'll go back and watch what was an amazing game to experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, like I said, that's how I think about this game too. It's like, okay, well, we're probably not going to win every game and they're going to have some stumbles. And even though this is like a really, really hard fought game, they were not, it wasn't like they made so many errors that they lost the game or whatever. It was a hard fought game. It was tough conditions and they were down a number of players and it was just, what can you do at that point?
It was a lot like that book. Was it Alexander and the Horrible, No Good, Very Good, Bad Day,
yeah.
whatever it is? Like it was like that. Like every single thing that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Yeah.
And if one of those like 6 plays that I talked about, or if the weather is maybe 15 degrees cooler, it's a completely different outcome. But it is what it is. That's the NFL. So.
Yeah, for sure. What did you think about the Tua injury? I was like, I don't know. I was tweeting a little bit about it. I was like, I can't believe he came back. I can't believe if it was concussion protocol, did he clear that and how did he clear that?
Yeah, that's crazy because they said it was a back injury and he wasn't walking like it was a back injury, but ultimately that kind of stuff as a fan is completely out of my control.
Yeah, exactly.
And, whether he was injured or not, dude, Tua did not win that game for them.
Oh,
so whether he was hurt or not, it doesn't. I honestly, when Teddy Bridgewater came in, I was a little bit more nervous. Like, oh crap! Like Teddy Bridgewater is actually an accomplished.
Well, and sometimes that happens,
as,
right? The backup quarterback comes in, it's a completely different ball game.
Yep, the defense hasn't prepared for him.
Exactly.
But Tua, Tua, after the game, they're like, is Tua and the Dolphins like now at the top of? Are they now for real? I'm like, no, they're not for real. He threw for 180 yards.
Right,
like it wasn't that he had. You take away that one pass to Waddle against Damar Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson. No offense, guys, if you're listening, but like Waddle is like a legitimate receiver. He came from Bama and everything, and they did a great job of shutting down Tyreek Hill. So kudos. But like that one pass to Waddle on 3rd and 22. You take that out of the
right. Yeah, you're right.
And it's like I'm no more scared of Tua now than I was before the game.
Yeah, exactly. And I watched. It was like first I thought, okay, he hit his head on the turf, and then I watched the replay very closely, and it looked like his head was it went back, but I don't think it hit. Now second look at it, like you said, he can't control that anyway. But I'm just saying I don't think it. Now that I look at it again, it seemed like it was. Not as hard as I thought it was in initial. But he did get up, and it was like, he couldn't even walk, So
yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. Like he wasn't walking like his back hurt. He was walking like he was like living in next Tuesday. So I don't know.
All right. So yeah, this week the Ravens. What do you think about that?
I'm a little nervous. Not nervous, but I'm aware that Lamar Jackson is a completely different quarterback than any other quarterback they're going to face this year. So they have to be aware of that. When they will be. They've done a pretty good job facing him, at least in that playoff game, right? And I can't remember what happened before that, but like they beat him in that playoff game. Like what was it like? Was it 17-3 or something?
Yeah. They shut him down for sure. Yeah.
So they do a really good job. Like the Bills' defense, Leslie Frazier, accomplished defensive coordinator. Who knew, right? That he. I mean that sarcastically. He has done an excellent job of shutting down players like Tyreek Hill last week. Derrick Henry, literally every time they've played him, except for that one run last season, they have shut him down. I think he averaged like 1.7 yards or 2-something yards a carry last week or 2 weeks ago. That said, they have to be aware of Lamar Jackson. They do have that defense for the Baltimore Ravens is not a Baltimore Ravens defense. Like you look at how they've been torn up. I heard
something today too that they've allowed the most amount of yards for long passes this year, or yards over 40 or something.
Yeah.
Like that, you know what I mean?
They have a very young secondary.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity. Like there's an opportunity for Josh to go off. Now it's going to be raining, I guess. I'm paying very close attention. I'm actually going there this weekend.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I think it's going to be raining the whole time, so weather could be a part of it as well. Bills' run game has not really gotten its ball rolling yet. So, I mean, this might be an excellent opportunity for them to do that. But that said, they do have Baltimore does have a pretty below average pass defense right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't know. I mean, Lamar Jackson is such a wild card that you just don't know what he's going to do. And I mean, like you said, they do a good job preparing for him, but who knows? I mean, that guy is a super freak. You know,
he is he's a complete wild card. The way that he's able to, he holds onto the ball longer than almost all starting quarterbacks in the league. But also, he does a lot of good with it. It doesn't mean he's getting sacked when he holds on to the ball. He's often scrambling out.
Yeah, I mean, he's legit for sure. And I think that, like you said, if it's going to be muddy weather or whatever, I mean, they need to maybe run the ball a little bit. And that's the thing. I think that, obviously we're a pass-heavy attack, but, those three running backs, I mean, they mixed in Zach Moss this week. What did he run for 45 yards or whatever? I mean, and then I don't think we saw him again.
He's a banger, man.
Yeah.
But I got to think that if it was Cook that had the ball on that play, it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
And that's not a slam on Moss.
Right.
They have different skill sets.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, those guys were gassed at that point too. Again, it sounds like I'm taking something away from Moss. I don't mean to, but like that defense was gassed. The offense was gassed. Yeah. He came in with fresh legs.
Yep.
I listened to a podcast, Locked on Bills, like almost every day with Joe Marino. And one of the things that he mentioned, I think it was before the game, I think it was last week, he mentioned how part of his thought process is with that three-headed running attack that they have right now, that Devin Singletary is their guy. So what they're doing is like the fact that they're working in Moss, they're working in Cook, they're working in Gilliam, although that's more of a pass thing. But that's not a detriment, or that's not a diss on Devin Singletary. What they're doing is they're probably trying to keep his legs fresh for the tail end of the season and the playoffs. Because look at how he came on last year. Like he took over the running game last year.
And that that's the thing I think about Josh too, is that even last year or even this year, I mean, how much there's no design runs for him that I've seen this year. I don't think. I mean, maybe a couple.
Good.
Right. But then once playoffs come, it's like. Then the whole playbook's unleashed.
Right.
If it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and goal, you're going to see that power sweep by Josh. You know what I mean?
And obviously, the Bills want the number 1 seed. If they can avoid playing an entire game, they want to do that. And as a fan, that's what I want. But at the same time, they've got to make. I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, they're going to make the playoffs, right? Like they're probably going to win the division, even though they're a game back right now. Yeah. They just have to make sure that they are there to play those games. Right,
exactly. And that's, and this, I think the first couple of weeks has been kind of a wake-up call to the fans, too. It's like, oh, shit, we got to, injuries are a real thing, and obviously other teams are dealing with that, too. But, man, we are pretty decimated in the first 3 weeks.
I feel like this is almost like not like a karma thing, but like a yin-yang thing, because outside of a couple injuries, I mean, Trey White included, but a couple, like, significant injuries over the past few years, like for the most part, since McDermott took over, there haven't been many injuries.
Right.
You've had Josh's rookie year; he was out for 3 games. Obviously, what's going on with Trey White now? And I'm missing a couple, obviously. But there's been like really nothing significant,
nothing huge. That's for sure.
At least nothing like now. That's for sure. Nothing even a third of what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. I saw today on the news, which was surprising, that Dane Jackson was practicing today.
That's insane.
I mean, that is,
dude. Do you remember Fred Jackson? Like he would get injured. He would go out of games, and it looks like his leg was like wrapped around his head or something. And then the next thing you know, like he's either back in the game later on, or he's practicing on Tuesday or Wednesday. Like I was on Twitter back in like 10 years ago. I remember I used to call him Wolverine because that dude would just like. He'd get like the snot knocked out of him. And you're like, oh my gosh, Fred Jackson is dead. And then next thing you know, like a couple drives later, he's carrying the ball. So maybe Dane Jackson's got it. Maybe it's the last name. Maybe it's a Jackson thing. I don't know. But maybe he's got a little Fred in him. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I saw it today, and they're just running on the field. I'm like, holy cow, that's incredible. But it is.
I mean, I'm thrilled that his head is just attached to his body. To be honest with you, that was horrific.
Yeah,
that was awful.
It was bad, and a lot of those injuries happen like that. But it's like friendly fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens where, geez, you get hit by your own guy, and the guy's just trying to make the tackle, but then he ends up.
Tremaine Edmonds is like a kaiju out there. He's just like otherworldly. Just a I would not want to take that face first. But
Yeah, exactly. I've been super impressed with Russo this year too. I mean, he's just really. I mean, I think that guy.
He's had a sack every game.
He is like
every game.
Yeah, and then they were saying like Von Miller was making some comment about him saying, "Yeah, this guy could be, in the next couple of years, the best."
It's pretty amazing when you think about like he barely played in 2018 for Miami. He had that great season 2019. He sat out 2020. I was listening to I think it was Locked On Bills again. Joe, if you're listening, you're welcome. I'm like plugging this podcast left and right. But
that's all right. We'll tag him.
Yeah, no, it's cool. But he mentioned how like he had only paid, Russo had only played like 500 or 600 snaps in college, and that was it.
Yeah.
And for him to come in now and he had a pretty good rookie season.
Yeah.
And now I think he's at 3.5 sacks.
Yeah.
3 games in. Like, obviously that's a tough pace to keep up, but that's like a record-setting pace. Or it's 3 games. I know, but like it's crazy.
I mean, it's just and that's one of those guys. He's like, what is he? 6'7", 240, 250.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just crazy, crazy build, and that's how some of those guys are able to be successful. It's just how it goes. Those guys are freaks of nature. Some of them.
It's amazing though, because you think about all these. I mean, there's a lot of people in this country, right? A lot of people in this world, but in this country. And I always tell my kids, like, it takes so much more than just having like God-given ability. It takes dedication. It takes hard work. It takes effort.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a credit to him, especially sitting out 2020 to like, it shows how hard he has worked. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I don't know what he was doing during COVID in terms of staying in shape, but he obviously stayed in shape.
Right.
But it just shows like to have come to an NFL training camp and just hit the ground running. I mean, it's cool. You love to see it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's not just going out joining some bar league. This is like the best the best of the best.
It's like the pinnacle of sports.
Right. I mean, this is the best of the best. You've got to. But you're right. I mean, those people even the people that don't necessarily have the God-given talent, but they work hard every day and they're working toward that goal. It's like, that's credit to them because that's what it takes.
You have to be a freak on the field and a freak off the field to succeed at the NFL. So I've been told. I have no firsthand experience.
I don't either. I don't either. I'm just an admirer.
Yeah, right, exactly. But there's a lot to admire. I mean, it's impressive. Like these guys are just like, it's amazing. Like you look at somebody like Von Miller, who, just his dedication to his craft and everything. Yeah. For all we know, like part of the, Russo's development this year is, I mean, dude, being in Von Miller's shadows,
right? Just being around
alongside him
company.
Through camp. Can you imagine what a gift, like to these younger players to bring in a future Hall of Famers? Like, oh yeah, and you can train with this guy.
I know, it's unbelievable.
Russo, like when they drafted him, because we normally try to have something ready for it's April. There's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
We try to have something ready for for the first round draft pick. Even with Epinesa the one year, we did a shirt about him.
Okay, yeah.
It didn't do too well. It was a tough name to pun. Yeah. But when we found out that I think it said Epin Awesome. I was like, it was a reach. But what do you want? It's April. We're in the middle of COVID. Like I'm doing my best, right? But we did one. We found out that his nickname in college was Groot.
Okay.
For Russo. And so we started to put a design together. And all of a sudden his agent got in touch with me. And they wanted him to do a shirt with us, like right away.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I was like, I'm glad you called. I kind of already have something in the works. And I sent it over. I'm like, because it doesn't, the stuff we do with 26 shirts, it doesn't like use their full name or their likeness. We infer, but we respect the rules,
Right.
And so I sent over the shirt design to the agent who passed it on to Greg.
Yeah.
And he said, Greg loves it. I'm like, fantastic. And
That's
so we
awesome.
did it. So that was weird though. Like talk about like bang, bang, bang. That happened so fast.
I know. That's crazy. I know. It's funny. We were talking about the best of the best. And I always remember it's like, I always used to think, I can throw a football pretty well. And, but then I remember one year I went to training camp and it was the year Bledsoe came. Mm-hmm. And I'm standing there watching him throw like, 40-yard out patterns. And I was like, I cannot throw a football like that. Like
I can't throw 40 yards, period, much less on target.
Like, I used to think I could throw a football pretty well until I saw that.
That's crazy. But I remember watching, when you're in high school, you have nothing but time. So I remember watching ESPN and every single show they had available. And I remember watching, this is during the Bills Super Bowl years, but I remember some film analysis of Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and just how precise they were with their routes.
Right.
It's just amazing how these athletes are able to do what they do.
It is. It's crazy. And those years, I was just telling my son that's like, this year I feel like, I mean, obviously the injuries changed some things, but it's the first year where I almost feel like I felt during the 90s Bills, where I was like, I know we're going to be good.
Yep.
I'm not as nervous every game as I usually am over the last 10 or 15 years because I'm like, maybe we're barely going to make the playoffs or what, hopefully we'll make the playoffs. I'm pretty confident we're going to make the playoffs. You know what I mean? So I'm not as nervous every game. And it brought me back to the 90s Bills where I was, especially after, even after the first Super Bowl they lost and those next couple of years, I was just like, we were kicking everybody's ass. I mean, just, we're dominant, and I felt almost like that this year where I was like watching the game, even watching the Titans game, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to win. It's like, I wasn't nervous at all. And usually I'm just like, I am, on the edge of my seat when the game starts, but this time I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to be good.
How spoiled are we though? I mean, because even like the Titans game and this past game, I mean, both games had opening drive scores, right?
Right.
But first of all, that's great because there was a time not too long ago when if the Bills could score 7 points in a half, you're like, oh, this is fantastic. Like for a home game, like we're halfway to free coffee from Tim Hortons and they can just get 2 touchdowns. But how spoiled are we now that we look at these opening drives, or I look at these opening drives and I'm like, they scored, but like it seemed a little clunky. It seemed like I was like, dude, they scored a touchdown. Shut up, But it's funny.
They missed that 3rd and 1, but they made it on 4th and 1.
Yeah, right. I gotta say how much I love how McDermott has just embraced going for it on 4th down this year.
Yeah,
just he really has put the trust.
And I was just saying that the other day too. It was like there was some stat. I think it was during the Titans game where they said last year we were, I think, last in the league on 3rd and short or whatever. And I was like, yeah, well, because they know they're going to go for it on 4th down, so they don't really care about it.
They play a 4-down game, right? Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. I tell you what, though, they got to work on that short yardage down by the goal line, though. That is something they struggled with against Miami.
And that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's like they don't really pull out the full, the Josh sweep. I mean, nobody's stopping him on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and we haven't seen him, I mean, obviously last year he slipped or whatever. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, that play is almost unstoppable,
Yeah, the sweep is different, but in terms of like going over the center and everything, I was listening to Eric Wood on GR, and he talked about how difficult that play actually is to execute. Because everybody's like, oh, Tom Brady was the great. Okay, good for Tom Brady, but like he's also the greatest of all time.
Right.
In every other category.
Right.
But Eric Wood said it's incredibly difficult when you have like 2 300-pound defensive tackles like leaning over you practically. Yeah. You've got to get the ball perfectly to your quarterback. Then you have to push.
Right.
He said he actually separated his shoulder twice in his career on that type of play.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And then working to the fact that Josh was working with a 3rd-string center, that game because Moores was out, and then so it's crazy. So, but I am happy, even if it. You know what? Even if it turns into a loss this past week, like I keep Josh safe. I mean, we need him in December and January.
And I think that's what they were doing last year too, because we didn't see much of that last year during the season either. But like I said, once the playoffs started,
it was a different
animal.
Otherwise, what are you playing for? You're here now. Now's the time to let it all hang out.
Because that's what I was thinking. The same thing last year. It's like, they're not. He's not running. There's no designed runs really. There's not, but that's okay.
I'll tell you what, 2020 was fun though.
Exactly.
2020 was fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think like I said, I'm excited about this year, and obviously everyone's picking them to win, so the pressure is more on them than anything else, as opposed to previous years. I mean, every show you watch, saw one of those analyst picks that everybody picked the Bills to win. You know what I mean? So.
We haven't seen that since the early 90s. And now there's a lot more shows than there were in the early 90s.
Right.
And they were all picking Buffalo.
Yeah.
Which makes you nervous, too, because how often do they get that right? Except for, maybe often. When you figure for 20 years, everybody was picking the Patriots, and half the time they were going to the Super Bowl. So maybe it's not that hard. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I think I don't know. I just I'm excited, and like I said, I go back to the '90s Bills, and this is the first time we've really. I mean, obviously we've been searching for this quarterback for And obviously we hit on him, obviously, because I think, by far he's, top 1, 2, or 3 in the league,
Josh Allen is proof that the universe eventually balances out.
Yeah.
When you figure the dearth of quarterbacks that Buffalo had after Jim Kelly, with a couple momentary bright spots with Drew Bledsoe and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who were there and gone just like that.
Right.
I mean, really, for the amount of quarterbacks that went through that, that team for 20 years, we totally deserve this. We totally deserve Josh Allen,
And even after the draft, when people were bashing the Bills for taking him, I mean, I think about that all the time. How everybody was just, they should have took Rosen, they should have took, and it's like,
yeah, it's crazy because think about it, dude, I don't watch that much college football. I have to think a pretty happy marriage, and I think if I added one more day of football, I can't. And even if I was watching college football, I wasn't watching Wyoming. I'm not watching Wyoming football.
Right.
So we're all kind of beholden to these experts.
Right.
And Mel Kiper was saying, I remember for months that Josh Allen was his number one pick. And I remember the first time Mel's first mock draft, he had Josh Allen going number 1 to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I remember the first thing I thought his last name was Rosen. I didn't even know who this dude was. And I was like, okay, I don't know who this guy is, whatever. And then you just start to hear people start picking him apart in the Senior Bowl and all these things.
Yeah.
And so when they drafted him, I wasn't thrilled. I was like, but my thought process with the draft and free agents and everything is always, as much as I love this team, the people making those draft picks, Brandon Beane and his crew, they have a lot more to lose if they get this wrong than I do.
Right, exactly.
I lose a couple years out of my life, and I'm already kind of used to being sad on Sunday anyway. So, I don't lose anything, but they lose a job. So
I mean, we can criticize all we want, but we don't know. You're right. The level of knowledge that they have compared to the average Joe like me is who knows?
And if you listen to any of these podcasts that include former players, whether it's John Fina or I know Jerry Ostrowski was filling in for John Fina on his show this past week. One thing you'll always hear them say is, well, it looks like they were trying to do this. Yeah. We don't know what was called here, but it looks like, Vaughn was told maybe don't push as hard because you don't want to stress the secondary or something, but you don't know. And so that's one thing that we as fans forget. We don't even know what we get angry at these players. We don't even know what they're being coached to do.
Exactly.
We don't even know what, big picture, we don't know what they're being coached to do. Exactly. And then we're sitting here yelling at Isaiah McKenzie or Josh Allen or somebody on the line or whatever. And we don't even know what.
Everybody sits back and is an expert, but we really don't know what's happening.
Right.
So.
And even the people that played the game are like, well, assuming that he was supposed to do this.
Right. Right. Yeah, we don't know. So, it's 100% right. And I always go back, my son played baseball. I coached baseball for 10 years. He played college baseball. And it was people that say that, there's always a misnomer out there. And I think baseball is so boring. But unless you understand the sport, there's so much going on all the time that you don't even know. People watch baseball that don't know baseball. And they're, it's so boring. But there's so much going on, from the pitcher to the pitch counts to the plays that are going on. I mean, it's just, there's so much going on that people don't understand. And that's part of the reason I love it, is there's so much going on and behind the scenes and the coaching and what they're doing and what the strategy is. And, it's, these plays are going on, but I mean, who are we to sit back and analyze armchair?
Do you have a favorite baseball team?
I've always been a Cleveland fan. I lived in Cleveland for a year. So back in the 90s, I lived there when they made it to the World Series back in the 90s. So that's kind of how I, became a fan back then. And I've kind of always been, my whole family is a Yankees fan. So my dad was, my mom, my brother, and I'm sort of a Yankees fan to just because my family is a Yankees fan. But
that's tough though. They're both AL teams, right?
Yeah, it is. But I'm a number one is Indians, for sure.
Yeah,
because it's and I've always, growing up, it was always, everybody liked the Yankees, and I was always one of those kids where I'm like, I'm not going to like the Yankees just because everybody else likes the
Especially
Yankees.
if you don't live in the Bronx or New York City. That's just they're like the Dallas Cowboys of baseball.
They're like
I don't know.
600 miles from us. Toronto's much closer.
I know, right? Tell me about it. Even Cleveland, or Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
I've taken my daughter to Pittsburgh Pirates games just because one, it's super close. Two, you can get tickets for like $7.
Yeah. And it's a super nice
goes.
stadium. We've been there a few times.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
it's beautiful.
It's awesome.
Beautiful
Have
stadium.
you been to Cleveland or no?
No, I've been to the city, but I've not been to their
not
stadium.
to the game, yeah. No. Yeah, it's all those stadiums are awesome. I mean, nowadays you go to any stadium and it's just, I mean, even the little bit older ones are so much better than, they used to be. Or you go into the, but I'll tell you, I was back in the day. I did go to Fenway, and that was like I'm not a Red Sox fan by any means, but
That's like almost a historical place to be.
Right, I'll tell you though, I went to the Red Sox game, and after that day, I was like, I could 100% be a Red Sox fan. Like the whole experience was just unbelievable. They have this. You're
like this American League floozy. Then you just go.
Yeah, exactly. Like whatever. I love everybody.
I'm playing.
But I mean, from the whole experience, that Yawkey Way is right next door to the, and they shut down the whole street, and it's a whole big street fair going on, and the whole nostalgia of that stadium is just unbelievable.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to go to a Cubs game in 2015. They're actually playing the White Sox, believe it or not. It was the Crosstown Cup.
Yeah.
And just all of Wrigleyville, like you said, it's kind of like a little bit of a fair.
Right.
It's really, it's wild.
Yeah, I haven't been there, but I mean, that's kind of on my bucket list to do, is to make it around to more stadiums, because now that he's, my son's done playing baseball and things like that, or, we were always busy with that. But I mean, to get around and just go to different stadiums is like, I heard Milwaukee is amazing. I mean, it's just like these places that you never thought you'd ever think about going to.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, that's on the list. But it's the same with the Bills and the Sabres too. I'd love to get out there and go to some road games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there is really something about going to a road game. I haven't been to too many. Maybe I think this is gonna be my fourth one this weekend. But there is something about when you go into, because you go to a Bills game, everybody's wearing Bills gear. You're like, I'm one of you. But when you walk into another stadium and you're wearing your colors, like first game I ever went to, away game I ever went to, was Cincinnati. It was actually Stevie Johnson's game where they came back and he scored 3 touchdowns.
Okay,
he had the "Why So Serious" on his shirt.
Oh
and everything.
yeah.
So everybody else is wearing like black and orange. And I'm like the one guy. I think I was wearing a T.O. jersey because I love T.O. I don't care. And he was playing for Cincinnati, that year after he had just played for the Bills. So I was wearing Bills stuff, wearing a Bills hat on, my Owens jersey. But you walk in and you're like, you're just standing up a little more straight, a little more, because like you're in enemy territory.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a fun experience.
Yeah.
And then I went to see the Bills play the Jets in 2015, and I went with my buddy who's actually a Jets fan. He's like, you got to come out here, watch the game. So fine. It was like a Thursday night football game, I think. It was like the famous, like the first Color Rush game where the Bills were all red, the Jets were all green, and everybody who was colorblind complained about that they couldn't tell who was who.
Exactly.
But I remember they won, and my buddy's like, we got to get you out of here now. Like, he was like scared for me. He's like, we got to get you out now, because it came down to the end and everything.
Yeah.
Tyrod, I think, pulled it out, or the defense shut down Fitz or something.
Yeah.
But that did feel weird rooting against Fitz, but I got over it real quick. But yeah, there's just something about going to an away game, though. It's a lot of fun. That's something I'd like to do more of.
And that's the whole thing. You don't know what you're going to get into. Like, I always think in the back of my head, it's like, what am I going to get into if I go to, like, I don't know, some of these fans, like, you see some of these videos online, you're like, holy cow, like, I don't want to get into a situation like where, and whatever. I've seen it in Buffalo, too. Not nothing bad, but I mean, there's definitely, like,
I've seen some stuff in
People
Buffalo
that get out of control, you know what I mean?
Bills fans are real jerks to and people always say, oh, I went to Green Bay and they're the worst. They threw ice in my face, which is an actual story I heard.
Yeah.
But that's one person. And there's people say, oh, Green Bay fans are the worst, or oh, Cleveland fans are the worst. No, people are the worst.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? People are people. They just root for different teams,
bad people all over the place, So there's just, you pick a couple out of a crowd and you're going to get them.
Yeah.
Put 80,000 people in, you're going to get a couple bad.
Yeah, right. So basically what, to your point, it's like, just roll the dice and hope you don't get jumped.
Exactly, I know.
Try to get yourself in the middle of a crowd.
I almost feel safer about going to a Sabres away game, because I was like, hockey seems a little more controlled than football does.
I went to a Sabres game in Chicago 2017, and first of all, the Chicago anthem, if you've ever seen it like performed.
Oh no, I don't know if I have. Yeah,
it's crazy. I won't spoil it for you, but it's different than anywhere else you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But everybody, like, I intimidated nobody wearing my Sabres jersey. People like, hey, how are you? Welcome to Chicago. I'm so sorry. You're like, it's okay. I like it. I like them. It's fine. So as a Sabres fan right now, you're not intimidating any other.
Exactly. Exactly. I know it's not like the Leaf. We had Sabres season tickets for years, and during the pandemic, whatever they wanted us to renew right away, and they didn't even know if season was happening. So I was like, forget it. I'm not giving you my money in May when I don't know if the season's even happening. So that's when we got rid of them. But I mean, obviously the Toronto games have always been crazy because, the Toronto fans come in and they pack half the stadium. And
it's how a lot of season ticket holders pay for all of their season tickets.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I typically would sell mine, but I went to one of the last years we had them. I went to the Leafs game, but there's kind of nothing like that, though. I mean, there's nowhere you can go where half the stadium is cheering for one team and the other half, I mean, is legit half and half most of the time.
Yeah, and that just goes to show you how expensive Toronto is, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and then and it's like we always end up sitting next to Leafs fans, or even if it was and the Canadian, whatever Canadian team it is, they travel crazy. Yeah. I mean, if it's Ottawa even, or
that's the state religion, right? Is hockey,
right?
In Canada.
So, Edmonton comes in, and you've got people wearing Edmonton jerseys. I'm like, you're not from Edmonton. Like, come on,
they're all Gretzky jerseys. Well, now they're probably like Connor McDavid. But
exactly. I'm like, you live in Fort Erie, I'm sure, right?
I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. Well, that would make sense, right?
Erie Otters, Canadian hockey fan. Come on, like that's not.
It's fine. They only have like 6 teams, and none of them win Stanley Cups anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that bad? I always root for the American team because it's been so long since a Canadian team won.
Oh, I know.
The Stanley Cup. I always because I'm like, let's keep that going. Let's keep. They're all Canadian players anyway, but
I know. Yeah, it was funny that last Leafs game we went to, though. There was a bunch of Leafs fans that got thrown out or whatever, and that was. I think I have it on video because we used to sit right by the aisle. It was like they were just throwing them out. Everybody's like, later, thanks for coming. Like,
that's fantastic. I'll throw the rest of them out, and it'll be perfect.
Yeah, thanks for coming. It's the first period. You're getting thrown out.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy that ride back home to Toronto.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, good to have you on, talking some Bills.
Yeah, no doubt.
We'll wrap this up.
Fantastic.
But yeah, absolutely. We'll put this out, and thanks again for coming on. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. 16-1. Let's go.
I know. We're in, buddy. Appreciate it.
Go Bills.
All right. Good.